program brought to you by Harvey County Digital, Harvey County Talk, where we can talk about any public policy or with any public official without stooping to or duping you with the usual partisan politics. I am your host, Lance Gormley. Our guest for today is George Chip Westfall. Chip was born in Topeka, Kansas, before moving to Halstead, where he went to school, graduating from Halstead High School. Chip attended Fort Hays and Wichita State, graduating from Barton County Community College with an associate's degree in criminal justice. He served Halstead Police Department for about 2 years and then served McPherson County for about 3. After that, Chip attended the Kansas Highway Patrol Academy, graduating and becoming a trooper. Chip served Kansans as a trooper from 1976 until he retired in 2004, achieving the rank of lieutenant. But he wasn't done there. Chip went on to serve the KHP as an advisor for the colonel's staff while serving as the director of the Critical Incident Debriefing Team from 2004 to 2018. If that wasn't enough, Chip has also served as one of our very own Harvey County commissioners since July of 2006. But most importantly, Chip is a husband, father of 2 sons, grandfather of 6, and a friend to countless more. You know, welcome to the program, Chip.
Thank you.
I'll say this. I'll say that I attended your retirement party yesterday. And, one more thing. One thing that we're starting to do as a tradition here at Harvey County Digital with anybody that we interview is we have you reach over and turn your light on.
Thank you.
Now we're on. My bad, Chip. You know, yesterday I attended your retirement party at the county, and I will just say it was very, very humbling experience. I figured it would be a good time to kind of get in and talk to a couple people and see, you know, maybe if I could dig up some dirt on Chip or something. And there was all kinds of dirt. So I was like, well, that's not unique in and of itself. So I went to talk to your son. And I just wanted to say that your son wanted to make sure before we started the interview that if you had anything to say about either one of them, you were probably embellishing the truth.
I'm blessed with 2 great sons.
Oh, I would agree. And a wonderful wife, Teresa.
Yeah.
You know, that was interesting. If you didn't get to attend that, there was a video that they had produced. Which just had a lot of people there that were just, you know, sending you a farewell. Mm-hmm. And after the last one on there was your wife, and it almost brought me to tears, Chip.
Well,
it did.
It did me.
Yeah.
And it did. A few others came up and commented. And that video is up on harveycounty.com.
Awesome.
Or on Harvey County Facebook. They posted it last night.
Very good. So
you can go see it.
And you must. I think you. No, you must. It was a wonderful time. It was a lot of people that attended to be able to say thank you. And I was fortunate to be there. I'm fortunate to call you my friend. And I've watched you for many, many years. And have just appreciated your service. And so hence the reason for the interview today.
Thank you.
So as I was researching you, as I would say I do with most, to give an introduction, I heard something in there that you've served for like 50 years of your life in some form or capacity. If it hasn't been as a trooper, it's been as a commissioner, or 40? How many years, Chip?
Well, I started out at Halstead PD, and just really before that, I started out at the city of Halstead as a volunteer EMS.
Okay.
And about 60 to 90 days later, I filled a part-time job with Halstead PD in April '71, and from then on. So it's been since 1971 till now. Yeah.
It's incredible to me when you're there in your retirement, and I'm a spectator looking at your life, you know, and what you've accomplished and the service that you've put forth for our community and being a trooper, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think, even if I started now, I'd die before I got there. So, most people don't dedicate their entire life to it. And I think that's a monumental thing.
And I'm not completely done. I've been asked to retain a couple seats on some advisory boards, so I'll do that for a few more years too. Yeah. So
not even done. Yeah. Not even done. Okay. So interesting to me. You were a state trooper. And I know that I have many friends in law enforcement, right? And something that always interests me is if you were in law enforcement pre 1980, right? And then you go 20, 30 years, how technology has changed and people have changed and laws have changed and everything else. What was it like starting out as a trooper in 1976 to kind of walk me through this path of what are some things that changed over the time of you being a state trooper?
Well, a lot of it is the in-car computer, video, audio. Back in the old days, if we thought we needed to audio something, everybody carried those mini little cassette packs in their pocket so they could record voice. And safety has improved with bulletproof vests, bulletproof shields. The degree of training. When I first started in law enforcement, there was no mandate of training, annual yearly training. And now it's 40 hours for any commissioned law enforcement officers. Attorneys have to have, doctors have to have annual training, other professions. And it just, our people are better educated through that type of training. They don't have to have a college degree, but they're just better educated to do their job in their specific part of the law enforcement world.
Very good. I was thinking as you were talking, and I'm going to get this loose here, but I do remember that it might have even been around 1976 or shortly before that when we had more law enforcement officers lost in the line of duty in a year. So, and I remember that there was a high point there, and then through your career, it just gradually went down. But it's interesting because you said safety. Like, I wouldn't think that it would be safer to be a law enforcement officer today than then. But some of those key factors, like you talked about with bulletproof vests and technology, have you found did you find over the course of your time that when dealing with the public that relationship became better over time?
The relationship between law enforcement profession and the public has been a roller coaster. It really has. In the mid 70s, when they were still having demonstrations to stop the Vietnam War and some public input on civil issues, been called to riot duty a couple times, and it's kind of scary. You know what's going to happen here. And those have kind of calmed out and mellowed out through the 80s and 90s, but we're starting to see that again.
Yeah.
And it just cycles a little bit. And every law enforcement agency of any size, once you get over the community size agency, like the Harvey County Sheriff or Heston and Halstead PD, when you get to the 50 to 70 to 100 officers, or like the Highway Patrol currently now is 400 to 500, you do not have every position filled.
Yeah.
Because of the backlash by the community thought of events that happened, and or some of it I'll blame on the media.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a profession people want today. And it's the younger generations coming up are more computer techie. They want to do things on a laptop or on a big computer. Yeah.
I'll say this. I would like to send a shout out to any law enforcement officer watching this program right now, or just any law enforcement period. Because when you really think about the dynamics of that job, that is a difficult job. It is a difficult job. Everything is constantly changing, and you have to be ready for an emergency at any point in time. And that's your job, responding to emergencies. And to me, that would be very taxing. And I'm very appreciative that when I call 911, that an officer shows up to my doorstep if need be.
You know, everybody shoots a video now off their phone. So
yeah,
you don't always see the whole event.
No.
But then again, phones and security cameras have helped law enforcement too.
Yeah.
So you just got to be patient and let, when investigations are announced that they're underway, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. Government takes time. Speaking of being a trooper, what's one of the most intense situations that you've experienced, if you'd like to share that?
It's one of the most. I think when I was a deputy sheriff, and then when I was on the highway patrol as a supervisor, I was assigned to the Drug Enforcement Task Force out of Wichita. As it's a multi-agency force within the DEA office itself, and had officers from different departments. And at any time we have a big drug case, whether when I was a deputy or with the patrol, the dynamic entry on a search warrant where known bad people are in there are pretty tense, really pretty tense. And you're not dealing with the good people. Another time is felony car stops, where you already know this is a felon. You may know it could be a local felony warrant. It may be a federal felony warrant, which we have done because the FBI, U.S. Marshals, those type of guys, and Secret Service don't have uniformed officers, and so a lot of time the patrol will make a felony car stop for them on a warrant, get everybody out and secure it, and then release them to that agency.
Yes, that would be intense. I would say it'd be intense. And then speaking of that, you said like a drug bust or something. Is it common, felony stop, drug bust, stuff like this? Is it common for you to have to show more caution given the severity of the situation?
Oh,
like
absolutely.
when people have more to lose, maybe they become more desperate?
Absolutely.
And so then when you're doing this felony stop, your question is, how badly do they want to get away, and what will they do to get away?
And what law enforcement as a whole in Kansas through the KLETC and the Highway Patrol Training Center and the other WPDSOs and the Kansas City bunch, is we try to standardize a lot of the procedure. Meaning if you do a felony car stop with 5 officers from 3 different agencies, everybody knows what the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 person is going to do.
Okay.
And that type of thing. So,
okay.
And we have trained together with different departments. Yeah.
Very cool.
Same thing with, unfortunately, we've had with shooting incidents over the years. The way we started out after Columbine completely changed by today on how you do a dynamic entry into a school with 1 person instead of waiting for 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And unfortunately, we have had to see that in Harvey County.
Yeah, I'm very aware. We talk about an intense situation, but with the good, there's always, or the bad, there's always the good. What's one of the most rewarding situations that you can remember?
Well, you always feel good after we get called to an emergency and kind of calm the water, so to speak. And I will, again, a Harvey County incident was one of them, was the Heston tornado. And it started clear down by Pretty Prairie and Castleton. And as it moved forward, all this law enforcement, fire, EMS, as it went through territories, was being drawn into it, and we're adding more and adding more. I was actually at work the day shift, got called back out, set at the south end of Heston, Kansas with Heston EMS, and we watched it go through town. And when I got to the fire station, finally, after we passed it off yet to another division in another county up at Marion and County in Division 2 out of Salina, got back while the chief of police was out of town on a very major family emergency, medical emergency, and they had no leadership. They were short a couple officers, and one of the officers that was there's place was hit. So the city asked that the patrol secure the town, and I made a call back to headquarters that got passed to my command captain that got passed to Topeka. We put 45 troopers in Heston in 2 hours. And locked the town down. And we had no real official report of looting over the 3 days. But it took also, Newton PD came up to help, and North Newton and other towns that sent officers real quick to help quiet things down and get things under control. So there was a lot of cooperation quick.
So even out of a disaster, you were able to help maintain civility and rule of law and order.
And the real probably success to that was Lonnie Bowler, our emergency management director. He'd just come on a year or so before, and incident command had just started through the police fire system. It was first put to use more out in California, and they brought it nationwide. And Harvey County, with all the fire departments and all the police departments and the state agencies that had people here assigned to Harvey County, wrote the new incident command. It had been signed off by every mayor within 3 weeks of the Heston tornado. So we knew this is how it's going to happen. And this group's doing this, and this group's going to do that. and that type of thing. So it took a lot of people that night for the first 4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so you're a trooper for many years.
Yeah.
All that comes with. All right.
Yeah.
By this time, I'm guessing your boys are raised. You probably started to have grandchildren by now.
We have 6.
Okay. So why in goodness gracious would you ever want to serve as a county commissioner?
I got talked into it.
So you didn't know the jig was up before it was up?
Yeah. I'd been retired about about right at 2 years, and had done some little part-time work for people and friends that owned businesses that needed a little help. And the current county commissioner had put it out that for District 1, Kenny Meyer, that he was not going to run again after his 16th year. And so Byron Motter, the then sheriff, said, you really ought to think about it. And then a couple of people heard that he'd mentioned it to me, and I got a few phone calls and some conversations, and I finally told Byron I was going to do it. We'll do it. But I need to know what all this is about. So he sets me up with an interview with Kenny Meyer at Kenny's house, and we talked for 90 minutes. And then at the very end, he says, well, I want to have to tell you something. A lot of my supporters are telling me I need to go ahead and file and run again. So I told the group, I'm not going to run. Well, then they talked me back into, why don't you go ahead and file, get your name out there, we'll see what happens. And lo and behold, after the filing deadline, Kenny and I both had filed, and we were getting ready for a primary. Kenny passes away suddenly. And the Republican, I applied to fill his slot as the Republican committee and told him I was already on the ballot. And so they did, thankfully they did. They appointed me to finish the unexpired term. The governor signed off on it. And then I was actually sworn in August 1st. I was appointed by the governor in mid-July, but it took all that steps and procedures to get it done.
So you filed, you committed, and then that, really unfortunate event takes place. And so now you find yourself fast forwarded to doing something that you thought you might have had a little bit of time for. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times what we hear about, and I can say this, I know this, the more I get involved in government, the more complex it seems to be, and the more I need to learn to be able to be better at serving the public. So I can only imagine there's a learning curve there. And you've worked in government, right, as far as being a state trooper and stuff. So there's probably some parallels there, being in public service. Yeah. But did you just almost feel like it just got dropped in your lap at that point? Well, I wanted to do this, but I thought that was going to be in August, right?
Yeah. I had served. One of the things that I think is probably had the community comfortable with me is I had already been serving and helped. I was an appointed member of the 911 Advisory Board when they started 911 I think it was in the 80s. That was because of Sheriff Morford. Because he wanted state law enforcement represented on it, because there's at that time were a lot of troopers and other agents and departments that use the police frequency on the system, the county's frequencies. And then I had served on the K-State Extension Council and been president of it. I served 9 years on the County Fair Board and was president of it. I'd gone through the Chamber's leadership program and served on its board of directors and served president of it. So I think a lot of people were comfortable with it.
Okay.
The first election, of course, with a change coming of a sitting candidate or a sitting position, there's always everybody jumps in, and the Democrat Party put up a qualified individual, but I won the election, and a couple of times I was unopposed, and a couple of times I was posed. So, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I believe in the process.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say that, because what you just told me was that you were involved in countless ways before you ever thought about running for commission. So in a lot of ways, when people think about running for office, it's not something that you just decide to do. It's kind of somewhere you position yourself, and then you happen to be a viable candidate if you'd like to be.
That process of filing, and then kind of compounded with Kenny's passing, and he did a great job for the county. and I started attending the meetings. So I was there listening in from the time the governor's appointment was going to come down, or from the Republican. I started attending because it was in the middle of the budget.
Yeah.
So I sat in the back as just an observer and a civilian attending. So then the very first day I'm sworn in at 9 o'clock in the morning, we're voting on the budget for the next year.
Oh, nice.
Nice
that. Oh.
They had started, and I credit the sitting commission and the Craig Simon, the minister, everything they were getting to me, because there was no computer at that time. Everything was paper. So I had a fair good knowledge of what was going to be passed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and see, that's another example of a way that a community comes together in a hardship and then is able to just push forward.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my two questions again, right? Except for, as a commissioner, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced while being a commissioner? What's the most challenging thing to be a commissioner, in your opinion?
It has to do, it all comes back to planning and zoning office. And the reason I say that is because what we're going to do is can affect the county in planning and zoning. And the number one thing is flood maps and regulations mandated by the feds or added by the state, or maybe needs to be adjusted a little bit by the county. And occasionally that is allowable. So you are affecting people's property. We had the ethanol plant looking at a site just west of the current landfill, because there was going to be water available by bringing it out from the city and all that, and it was going to affect property clear into the city of Newton. With that decision, with those houses north of 50 there, we've had that. We've had the pipeline that came through 10 years ago. Would you allow this big pipeline that comes through out west of Heston and wiggles around and comes by the west side of Newton and on out of the county and goes to Cushing, Oklahoma? So that affected property rights, and now we've had wind, and now we have Bitcoin operations at substations. So you're always affecting somebody's rights. No, I don't want my neighbor to have this on their property because it may affect my property. But does that property owner have a right to have an oil well? Does a well, water well, or a gas well, or a wind generator and all that? It is, you've got to take your time, and people want you to rush to a decision. You've just got to step through it, listen to people. Sometimes you want to ask them a question back, but it may not. If you start asking questions back a lot, especially in the public part of the commission meeting, you're just backing up everybody's agenda. So you go out and talk to them in private.
Yeah.
And you really learn more in private, talking to people and their background and what they understand and that type of thing. When the ethanol plant was coming in, it died because of the 2009 recession. And they finished up plants that were in progress, and then companies just didn't break any ground on new ones. An attorney called me, who was going to represent some of the people up in Hidden Meadows and all that. And when it all got said and done, he says, "Do you understand our position?" So I started rattling questions I thought he should have asked. He says, "Well, you know more about this than anybody." I said, "Well, you have to understand everybody's point of view."
Yeah. And it's interesting, as I've endeavored to do some of this stuff, it's interesting how I would say one of the biggest challenges is to communicate effectively with people, but you took it at a different approach. You took it more personal just now. You said that it had, like, the greatest challenge is that you've got to get out there and make sure that you're the most informed, that you know what's going on, that you take the time to talk with these people and then educate them. Well, you spend the time to do that, Chip.
And that's a learned lesson from the Highway Patrol. And I when I taught for 5 years in new supervisor schools for both civilian and commissioned officers who were making their first rank to a field supervisor, get involved. And I tell this also in the recruit classes too when I would preach. Get involved in your community in one thing, whether it's your church, 4-H, Little League sports, Optimist clubs, whatever it might be, because people will come and tell you more things that's going on behind the scenes when you're not wearing that uniform than they will having to come before you at the office in uniform or whatever. And within the last 3 years, I had a person get a hold of me to tell me about a house that was probably selling drugs in the middle of the night. So I passed that on to the appropriate agency. I don't know what came of it, but they're just, people are just more comfortable when you're sitting there with a cup of coffee and having a chat. So that's why I go to coffee group with one group, sometimes in the afternoon with another group, and I eat lunch with 2 different groups some days of the weeks. And
I've ate some tacos with you, Chip.
yeah, I know. And, that's how you work with your constituents to get the right decisions.
Absolutely.
And it can be over a chuck hole somewhere on the highway,
or even just calling you up on the phone. I will say this: I've appreciated when I've called you that you've responded to me. You know, you don't have to, right?
No.
So, I mean, I'm just one person, but I appreciate it. So the counter is, what's one of the most rewarding things?
Well, it's probably the most rewarding thing is when nobody files back against you, but
or when you win an election. Right?
Yeah, when you win the election. But it's when people come up and say thank you for the new bridge near me, or thank you for the road work, or I was up at health department and man, were they on top of what I needed to get for my young kids through the WIC program and all that. And then I think the biggest thing is we had a group kind of start up going after our election process in Harvey County. Mm-hmm. And after Rick Pifo, the clerk, went through it with them and asked some of them to even start serving, that quickly went away.
Yeah.
And that speaks well how we manage the government. We're very open to our department heads, and in county government, different than city, some of your department heads are elected, your county attorney and your sheriff and treasurer, clerk, and register of deeds, and some are hired direct by the county commission. So you have 2 sets of rules on some performances, and that we're able to work them together. And some of the stuff we have done in Harvey County has been duplicated around the state. I will tell you that.
I do know that.
Very proud of that.
Yes.
And we just keep looking forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing when I was there listening to the KHA and SAK and all the acronyms that you're involved with. I'm like, this sounds kind of like the time I interned with Rick. And I thought, it's interesting how influential you have been at the state level as a commissioner. And then also, like Rick, I could parallel that. He is very involved as an elections clerk or the city or county clerk and elections official. I mean, we have something in Harvey County that we do right. And if we can prove a process, then you can do that and have the same results. Yeah. And I've seen that. I think Harvey County is very good at pushing things forward that others connect to for future benefit.
And there's rewarding things working with the state and the feds. And I've always told even Senator Moran, who's a good acquaintance of mine, and has helped Harvey County greatly on some projects. And I've told some of those state legislators, you guys are the state and the feds, but the most effective form of government across this nation is local government.
Yep.
And the reason is any citizen can walk in either once a week or every 2 weeks and sit down and talk with the entire board. And if you were to go to Topeka and demand to see the governor and the entire Kansas legislature,
never happened. My
good friends with the stripy pants from the Highway Patrol will be beside you real quick.
Yes, telling you. You can leave. You're welcome to. You're free to leave. So 2006 to 2022, that's a long stretch by anybody's imagination. Why did you just keep going? I mean, what was it that kept you saying, for all that this has good and bad, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to file. I'm going to run. Why?
Good question. It's since 1971. It's my desire to serve. That's my niche, serve the public. I think probably it's generated back that my salaries pretty much have been paid by the taxpayer. So what can I do to make it the most effective? The Highway Patrol used to have an office at 85th and North Broadway. The gun range is still there, but that office has now been torn down. But how can we operate that office with the least amount of money, make it nice on the inside and efficient for the troopers had a place to go do their work, because we had expanded the manpower level at Sedgwick County and we outgrew the division headquarters or the troop headquarters building. So we had anywhere from 18 to maybe 29 officers assigned to that building. I was actually called the building superintendent.
Nice.
And so I took care of whether or not we had ammunition and toilet paper. But the biggest complaint would be the sticky note on your desk, we're out of Coke in the pop machine, or out of Dr. Pepper, or out of this. So
That's a nice title to have.
Yeah.
I'm a superintendent, buddy.
yeah. And the first time we had that, we had a division meeting or a troop meeting, and the colonel of the highway patrol is also referred to as the superintendent come in. And some of the people started calling me the super, and he's looking around like, that conversation doesn't make sense to me.
It's like, super, yes, no, I do not give you the code.
Yeah.
That is his job. Okay, so you went from 2006 to 2022, and I mean, it was a conscious decision. You decided, I'm just not going to do this anymore. It's time for me to move on. So why?
Well, one of the reasons is Terry had retired. My wife, she is an attorney by trade. She worked for KDOT 10 years, and then she went to work for the Highway Patrol, teaching constitutional law, search and seizure, traffic, and all that. And then Kelly TC, which is actually Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center, operated by the University of Kansas. My first wife, God bless her soul, Paula, had passed to cancer, and we'd started dating and all that, and they made an offer she really couldn't refuse, salary-wise. So she started down at the Yoder campus there and needed a place to stay, and so I moved her into my house here at Newton, and eventually we were married a year and a half later, and she retired in the September of 2019. So we're both retired now and out of things, and we got 6 grandkids from 16 years of age to 4, and 2 are nearby and 4 are not. So we got to travel some. So that's one of the reasons. And it's time to pass the torch, so to speak, as they have said before. You can't stay forever. And there's only been a few stay for 20. There's only been a half a dozen that have done 16. Oddly enough, one of them was Commissioner Gene Windling for Harvey County, who was a high school classmate of my dad. And I consulted him when I was going to run. But it was time. It's just time. And county would call and say, can you look into this for me and attend this meeting somewhere the commissioners can't get loose? We just need somebody there to monitor it. I'll be glad to go. I love to serve.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
That's all I can say. What are you going to do in retirement? I know you're going to fly a plane.
Yeah, I have been, and then both my wives have helped me. We had a deferred comp account that I set up in the Highway Patrol or through the state of Kansas, and we had never touched that. And now that is out of all my paychecks, that has been to the point that I can afford a real flying airplane. Before we had Terry and I both had powered parachutes and flew around the western part of the county quite a bit, but this time we can go places with this. Yeah. And that's what we're doing. What we're going to do more of.
It's awesome. Fly high, Chip.
Travel. We got a camper. We'll be going places.
Fly high, Chip.
Yep.
Fly high.
Booster seat.
Yeah.
You got a booster?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know I harassed you about I've never flown and having you take me up on one of them paraglider things, because if it broke, we could parachute to the ground. But I'm not going to, even if you ask, I'm not going to fly in your plane with you.
This plane has a parachute.
It does? So if something goes wrong, it'll just float to the ground.
Yes, you pull this red handle on an emergency called the Ballistic Rescue System. It was developed by a big parachute company with Cirrus Aircraft, and they started putting them on Cirrus airplanes. And between Cirrus and BRS, they have decided to be like Volvo. They've patented it, like Volvo patent seat belts, but they don't enforce the patent.
So they just want everybody to be able to
Yeah.
not die in a plane crash.
Yeah.
Like my greatest fear,
Cessna
right?
has a lot of different aircraft companies use them today on the smaller aircraft.
Okay.
You can even get them for a helicopter.
I was going to say, it had been like 10 years ago or more where I remember seeing something like a parachute that could be on a plane, but
Yep.
I never seen this take off or anything
Yep.
or stuff. I don't know. It's quite then. Chip, I know I've said thank you. I don't know how many times during this interview. I know that for everybody in Harvey County that you've served over all these years are very appreciative of you. I know that I personally am humbled by your service and to know you. I'm proud to call you my friend. I've sought you on many things for mentoring stuff, Chip, and you're an awesome person, and I'm thankful, and I know many others who are thankful, and we're just more than appreciative for everything that you've ever done and put in, and I don't, words can't express enough. I wish I could give you something, a hug, a high five, I don't know. Yep. You know, but please stick around, keep doing what you're doing. I know we talked about some stuff that you're going to continue to do. Yep. So he's not even done serving now. Yep. Just in a different capacity.
Well, it's been a great ride, and you know, a lot of it I learned as a police officer, as a supervisor, and I've through being a training supervisor too, it's helped that I've carried forward employee conduct issues both in law enforcement and the county. We've updated policy because of that. I've learned about water more than I need to know. I absorbed a lot out of KDOT as a trooper because we do attend safety meetings at construction sites and hear about, you know, how do you cool the asphalt down and how soon can you put traffic on it, and traffic management, and learned through that, and had a good friend that was a bridge construction, Leroy King of King Construction, was in our church, and then, but just coming on board with the county and from the fairs and the 4-H projects we did, I've said this many a time, I feel like now I have a PhD degree in government management, and it's just because of exposure and things you had to do, things you liked to do, and things you didn't really want to do, but we had to because some authority higher than us has told us that. And so you bring it down to our system, and what does it fit, and how do we get it done? And that's where we are today. And the county has some projects ahead of them that's going to be great. You know, we just recently bought the building the health department's in. We were having to expand the number of courtrooms because we were finally funded to expand to 4 judges in Harvey County, and McPherson County will take the half-time magistrate and keep it in McPherson County. So by law, we're required to provide office space and courtrooms for judges. So we will have to remodel the courthouse. And the floor plan really hasn't been changed since it was designed in '63 and opened in '67. So it's time to do that. We're the last county in the metropolitan area of the federal metro area of Wichita to add an annex, a true annex building. So we'll move there'll be some departments moved to the Pine Street site that maybe are cooperative together. And then that will free up some remodeling at the courthouse that needs to be done. You know, and people say, well, government grows. Yes, government grows. The population's grown.
Yeah.
You know, population has grown. Valuation in the county has grown. Our employment in our county has grown. So it just takes better roads, better bridges, better health care. You know, our flu vaccine crew is just, in the fall, is just busy.
Yeah.
And we've also, you know, COVID has changed how we do things. We now have video equipment and we televise meetings, you know? So it's constantly changing, and you just got to match your valuation to that really grows faster than your mill levy does. And this is the same for everyone. And, but as my KAC president time, what I've really learned is how fortunate Harvey County is, because we have in this state about 33 counties under 5,000 people, and about 35 counties between 5 and 10,000 people that still have to provide the same service we do.
Yeah.
As we have to provide the same service that the big counties do, the Sedgwicks and the Johnson. So you've just got to mix and match and mold it and see what agency can help the other agency and to get things done. We are very fortunate that Harvey County made a decision, and the citizens, that they just chose in the middle 1990s to go to a full-time county administration staff crew. And with all the federal mandates and federal funding programs now, the small counties struggle. That really does. to keep up with that type of stuff.
Okay, so one more.
Okay.
One more question.
Yeah.
What do you think the future of Harvey County looks like?
Right now, the Hugo Wall School of Government says Harvey County is going to grow at the age of 65 or 62 and older. We are the retirement capital of Kansas, almost, it seems like, which is a good thing and which is a bad thing. But I see the corridor to Wichita expanding in the next 20 years through here along the interstate corridor. All of our major employers are telling us they need people, and not just 15 people or 20 people. They're talking in some of the major employers, hundreds of people, which speaks good for the work ethic of South Central Kansas. That's a good thing. Our hospitals, and we're lucky to have the hospital we've got. We are lucky that the county or the cities do not have to have a tax to keep their sales tax to keep their hospitals open. Yeah. And that's a big thing out west in southeast Kansas. So we're very lucky. We're about 20th in population, and we're the 95th in size, roughly, in square miles. So that's a good thing. We have townships that will take care of the roads. More and more counties, the townships are shutting down because of cost of equipment, which then puts the burden back onto the county. So we're very good. We have great EMS service, even though we lost one at Sedgwick. We were able to work out a plan where Newton took on some of the district of Sedgwick, and Harlested really took on the biggest core. And we have, volunteer fire departments that can run first responders out to stabilize till paramedic units can get there. We're very, very blessed that way.
So the projection is positive.
Positive. That is good. Yeah.
All right. Well, Chip, do you want to turn your light off?
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, there you have it, folks. And thanks for listening to this episode of Harvey County Talk. This is Lance Gormley reminding you to be informed, stay informed, get registered if you're not already, and go vote. Good day, good night, or good riddance. Either way, we hope to catch you next time. Tune in or tune out.